So first up, assuming I managed to get this up on October 3rd, it is October 3rd. And that means it's Mean Girls Day, officially. And so we wear pink. And also we've got a nice magician's reference, courtesy of one of the amazing Sudsers. So yeah, that's what's going on here. And also, here's the thing. It is a Breast Cancer Awareness Month as well, and that's pink. So I'm going to hope that Mean Girls Day is also a not Mean Girls Day, and we are celebrating the boobies and breast cancer awareness for everybody because everybody can get breast cancer. You know what I mean? And I want to hope that those things are tied, but if they're not, they're tied here. So happy both of those things day. Again, assuming I get this up on October 3rd. That has nothing to do with what we are making or doing or talking about today, but this is my time. I will tell you what we are doing in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things. And you are here for a week of, well, I guess reactions. So over here in this soapy corner of the internet, yes, we do make soap, and we do cosmetics, and we talk about recipes, and we talk about how-tos and designs and all the things. But I am wildly more interested in the how behind something than just the what. So showing you a beautiful bar of soap so you can, better improve your design. Don't come to me. There are much better channels for that. Is fine. Giving you a recipe for something is also fine, but you're not really going to become a better soap maker or have a better knowledge base inside of that big, beautiful brain unless you understand the how. And so I like to get into the how and the why and the behind the scenes of soap making. And in doing that, I often find myself sort of debunking bad information that's been sort of allowed to continue online. I don't know, a lot of misinformation, I think just because some person saw it from some other person on a forum and that person has been making soap for 20 years, so they have to be right, or whatever. And so as a result, we tend to just start cycling information that isn't really backed up in much of anything, and we kind of lose the plot in the process. And so I guess that's what this week is going to be, because whenever I see information like that on the soap making forums, I do want to try to turn some of it into teaching moments. And so today we are going to focus on this post that was put up on, I believe, Saponification Nation, with a picture of a bar of soap from Perfectly Posh or something. And the text of the actual post stated essentially, I've been making soap and this is the first time that I've ever used this kind of soap, and it's slimy and it feels different on my skin, and also, if you see, I can see through it. What is this? And they included a picture of the soap itself, which, yeah, you can absolutely see through it, as well as an ingredients list. And so, of course, I clicked on the comments because I wanted to just eye roll and laugh at the people who were going to just essentially dump on like a big company because their soap is obviously so much better than said big company. I do find entertainment in reading those comments, but I didn't get any of that in these comments. What I got was actually very surprising. I expected the first comment to be, this is a melt and pour soap. This is a glycerin soap. And then everybody just bagging on this big company. That's not what I got. I got a whole lot of people talking about the different oils that were in it. So maybe this oil caused that, or maybe that, etc., and so forth. And not a lot of this is a glycerin soap. Once somebody did finally say that, they started talking about, but it's triple milled. It's a triple milled soap, so it's not glycerin. And that really got me thinking about what milled means generally, what triple milled means, what French milled means. Do we all understand the difference? And is that difference nothing at all and it's all just still rebatch? Short answer to that is yes, it is all still rebatch, but there is a different way that you can approach all of it, and there are slightly different really assignations or definitions depending on what you're talking about. And yes, that soap by Perfectly Posh, that's Melt and Pour. That is a glycerin soap. So we're going to talk about that too, and how they probably made it, while I make a really fun and weird batch of soap that I've been making for a wholesale account for several years. Well, a number of wholesale accounts for several years, as an option for them to do like a lush, style cut your own, bar of soap thing, there in the video where we do all the things. Okay, so first up, the low-hanging fruit. What is milled soap? Well, this is milled soap. I mean, the definition of milled is to reduce to fine particles. So that's what we're doing. And so rebatch is therefore then milled. So you can call your soap, your rebatch, milled. Hand milled. Milled. It's fine. Whatever you want. This particular process here of, taking an existing cold process soap, a soap that was created by cold process or hot process or whatever, and turning it into a melt and pour soap, that's been around for a very long time, since glycerin started being added to stuff after, we figured out how to extract things, whatever. But the actual process of essentially grating down soap with or without adding glycerin to it, because usually when you're doing a rebatch, right, you're going to take all of these soap shreds here and you're going to put another liquid into it, or maybe some more oils, depending on how old your rebatch is. You're going to put it in your crock pot or whatever. You're going to melt it down. You're going to take your whisk or your blender, your stir stick or whatever to it to make sure it's nice and smooth, and then you're going to re-pour it. The only difference between that process, which is rebatch or milling, and, making a melt and pour version of it, is that you're putting glycerin in as your liquid instead of a water or more oils. So yeah, you're putting in your solvent. This is something that's been going on for a very long time. I'm reasonably certain that this is how Lush actually creates their bars. If you look at their bars of soap, they're not quite glycerin. They're not as shiny as like a traditional batch of soap that's made from scratch for a melt and pour base. And they also do not have the humectant properties that exist with our, regular sweat versions of a glycerin that's made from just a hot process method. So this is a milling process that is completely, totally fine and easy to call, your soap milled. For sure. It's rebatch. Now, how about triple milled? What the heck does that mean? Or French milled, which is really, I guess, where the confusion was coming in with that particular post, because they said triple milled, and so it therefore could not be melt and pour. Well, it can still be a glycerin soap. Okay, and next up, what is French milled soap or triple milled soap? Well, so there's a bit of a confusing history with all of that. Much like everything in the soap making world, there's a very small, I know we care about this a whole lot, but there's a very small percentage of the population just overall that really thinks about their soap and how it was made and the history of it. So as a result, there's not a lot of history out there. But from what we can tell with French milled soap, this is a process that apparently has dated back to the 1700s, involving 3 presses through steel rollers. Now, I don't know if that's actually accurate, that back in the 1700s they were pressing their soap through 3 different rollers or not. but I don't suppose it matters too terribly much because the process is the same regardless. And I will post some videos that you can go check out for like actual like French manufacturing stuff. It's very cool. They have subtitles, so you can check that out. But what they do is they make a soap by a cold process, and then they mill it into very small, little soap shreds, rebatch. And then they let that sit out for a very long time, and they let it dry out, and they take that and they heat it up with other stuff, a lot of the time glycerin, and then they go ahead and with all of that, they will run that through after it's a nice creamy consistency. They will run it through several rollers to continue to compress these bars and these soaps into, really firm, hard bars of soap. Essentially, the biggest benefit is going to be extracting all of the air bubbles and everything out of it to produce a really firm bar. That's triple milled, apparently, because they use 3 rollers. Now, I have found that in actuality, in my research of French milled, that it has more to do with the recipe, much like, an Aleppo soap or, an all olive oil soap or whatever, than the actual organa soap, than the actual process of running it through 3 rollers. But do that, I mean, fine, cool. If that's the definition that we're going to accept as, soap makers, that in order for it to be called triple milled soap, it has to have been messed with 3 different times. Fine. Is the inclusion of the machinery really needed? I don't really think so. I mean, again, if you're going to be calling your soap triple milled, what's going to come to mind for an end user, or if they know anything about soap, is going to be that it's French milled, and that is a different connotation. And so I suppose it could actually be seen as a little bit misleading. But in actuality, if you went through, the first round of making the cold process, and then you milled it to create your soap shreds, and then you added glycerin to it, which was also made via milling it and extracting all of the glycerin out from a different type of soap. Yeah, sure. You messed with it 3 times. It can be called triple milled. Is it honest? I mean, it's technically accurate, I suppose, but it's kind of like the natural thing. I don't really think that it should be, something that we really throw around. It's buzzwords. I mean, it's buzzwords for France, too. So, that's a big boy, by the way, the end of the bundt cake here. And again, this is a milled soap. It's a rebatch soap that's turned into melt and pour, so it has a low glycerin content in all of it. So it's a firm bar of soap that will not have the overly annoying humectant properties, so it's not going to start getting glycerin dew just hanging out on this particular wholesale account's, shelves, and then they can just cut it up however they want. So again, this is what Lush does. Pretty sure. But the whole idea of a French milled soap, I would stay away from that, and triple milled if you are, marketing or whatever, because I don't know, I think the French sort of, they've locked that in, you know what I mean? And we should let them keep that. Just like with an Aleppo soap or with a Ghana soap. So, like a black soap or whatever. I think we should let them keep that and keep it true to form. Whether or not the 3 rollers have anything to do with it, it's kind of irrelevant for me. I think this is something that they've marketed and used for a very long time. And so we should let them have that and not call our soaps triple milled. But if you are making a soap like this, for example, wherein you have milled something down, can you call it, a hand milled soap or just a milled soap? Yes, you absolutely can. So by that logic, again, this is a melt and pour bar. This has become something that can be remeltable because of the addition of the glycerin in it. Can that be milled soap? Yes, it can be. So technically speaking, Perfectly Posh, they were not wrong in calling if they even call their soaps that. I was unable to find any information about them doing that online. But are they wrong calling their soaps milled? No. Is it kind of weird? Yeah, I guess it kind of is. But, whatever. It works for them. Net. Milled soap, melt and pour soap, rebatch, it can all be kind of the same thing. And there it is, a super cute rebatch soap. So turning cold process into a glycerin base. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It's been around for 1,000,000 years. Definitely try it if you haven't already. I've done a video on it. And some information about the differences in milling. So yeah, I mean, long story short, it's all milled. That's what French milled always was. Do I think it's okay to call it a triple milled bar of soap? I mean, I guess it's technically not inaccurate, right? Because if milling is, grating it down, right? Essentially doing something 3 times. Well, I mean, yeah, you make the original soap, you then shred it, you then put glycerin in it, but glycerin, in order to get it comes from extracting from the... Sure, I suppose so. It's not against any sort of definitions because there are no real definitions for any of this. Is it sort of dishonest? Yeah, I do think that it's kind of dishonest. It's like calling your products, all natural when all natural is kind of a buzzword that doesn't mean a whole lot. Do I think you can call your soap French milled? I think you cannot unless you're in France. I think that kind of goes to the whole champagne thing. Like, I personally wouldn't. You can live your best life and do whatever you want, obviously. But I think that it goes back to like champagne and, the United States can't call their sparkling wine champagne because that's a French thing, even though the trees, the vines, the grape things that grow in France now that champagne comes from are actually, trees or vines or grapes or whatever from the United States because we sent it over. They had a drought. It was a big old thing. It's wild, but that's not what this channel's about. So I don't. If you're going to call your soap French milled, I think you should actually be from France, and be manufacturing it there. To that, French milled, that's definitely a marketing tactic that they have been using for a very long time as far as talking about the process. I have found with all of my research and actually looking at French milled soaps from like French old established soap companies that the recipe is wildly more important, that they actually keep that recipe very close to their chest with, it's like a 300-year-old recipe, has all kinds of clays and very special stuff in it that they're not telling anybody. And that's more of the important process as opposed to grating it all down and then melting it and then reforming it into perfectly smooth bars of soap. So that's just my take on the whole French milled. Is rebatch milled? Yes, that's by definition, that's what that is. So you can call your soap milled for sure. And it definitely does have a fancier connotation than just soap or rebatch or soap scraps or whatever. But that is effectively what you were doing. Is melt and pour milled? Yeah, can be. For sure, depending on how you make it. In this particular instance, that's exactly how you make it. You shred everything down, melt it down, and reconstitute it, adding some glycerin. And yeah, it is now a milled soap. So I hope that helped. I really enjoyed looking into this and getting some information out there. I obviously enjoy making these soaps because they're bundt cakes, and how freaking cute is that? Like, stop it. So I hope you enjoyed that too. And hey, if you have one of those random silicone bundt pans, maybe use it for soap, because who makes buns? Probably a lot of people. But anyway, I am out of here. I have 1,000,002 things to do. I have a lot of sudsers who are going through a lot of things, and so sudsers, I see you. That's the cat again. But I see you. I recognize you. I know that you're going through a lot, and I am there with you in spirit. And if you need anything, you can obviously reach out to me and we can talk. I'm happy to be an ear or a sounding board or somebody to yell at just to get some frustrations out. For the rest of you, you do not have that ability. Do not yell at me. Do not slide into my DMs. I don't know you and you don't go here. But I am out of here. I will see you guys all again tomorrow for another round of debunking, demystifying, answering questions, really kind of just reacting to the internet and why it be weird round of soapy fun. Bye.